At 6:47 a.m. on December 21, 1939, Simo Häyhä settled into a snow-covered position in the forests of Kollaa, eastern Finland, approximately 400 yards from Soviet forward positions. Temperature was minus 43 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind chill pushed the effective temperature to minus 60. The winter sun, barely rising above the horizon at this latitude, provided 4 hours of weak daylight. Häyhä wore white camouflage over his standard Finnish army uniform, carried his personal Mosin Nagant M28-30 rifle with iron sights, and had 200 rounds of 7.62 54 mm ammunition distributed in pouches across his chest. He was 5 feet tall, weighed 140 pounds, and looked nothing like a soldier who would terrorize an army of 450,000 men. 21 days earlier, when Soviet forces invaded Finland with overwhelming numerical superiority, military analysts had predicted Finland would surrender within 2 weeks. The Red Army had 450,000 troops, 2,000 tanks, and 3,000 aircraft. Finland had 180,000 troops, 30 tanks, and 130 aircraft. The mathematics suggested inevitable defeat, but Simo Häyhä understood different mathematics. One Finnish soldier, properly positioned in terrain, he knew intimately. Fighting an enemy unprepared for Arctic warfare could kill dozens of Soviet soldiers before they located him. One company of Finnish soldiers using those tactics could stop a Soviet battalion. Finland couldn't win the war through conventional combat, but they could make the cost of victory unbearable. Soviet military doctrine, developed for fighting on the European steppes where visibility extended for miles and terrain offered minimal cover, emphasized massed formations and overwhelming firepower. Soviet troops wore brown uniforms designed for temperate climates. They operated in battalion-strength formations that moved along roads and forest trails. They assumed that superior numbers would crush Finnish resistance through simple arithmetic. Standard Finnish doctrine, written by officers who understood that Finland would always face numerically superior enemies, emphasized guerrilla tactics, knowledge of terrain, and marksmanship. Every Finnish soldier was trained as a marksman. Every Finnish soldier understood winter survival. Every Finnish soldier knew that small units using terrain could defeat large units operating on roads. Häyhä took those principles further. In the next 98 days, until a Soviet explosive bullet struck his face on March 6, 1940, he would achieve 542 confirmed kills, the highest individual sniper count in any war in human history. He would force the Soviet Union to deploy specialized counter-sniper teams, heavy artillery, and even aircraft to locate and kill him. He would become known to Soviet troops as Belaya Smert, the White Death, a ghost in the snow who killed without warning and disappeared without trace. If you want to see how one Finnish farmer became the deadliest sniper in history, hit that like button. It helps us share these stories of impossible odds and extraordinary skill. Subscribe if you haven't already, because we're going deep into the Winter War, where temperature and training defeated tanks and numbers. Back to December 1939, and the marksman nobody believed could change a war. Simo Häyhä was born on December 17, 1905, in Rautjärvi, a small farming community in southeastern Finland near the border with Russia. His family were farmers, working land that had been in the family for 3 generations. The farm was small, approximately 30 acres, producing hay, potatoes, and vegetables, sufficient to feed the family with small surplus for sale. Life was hard, money was scarce, and survival required constant work. Young Simo learned to shoot as soon as he was strong enough to hold a rifle, approximately age 7. Hunting wasn't sport for Finnish farm families. It was food procurement. The forests around Rautjärvi contained elk, deer, hare, and game birds that supplemented the family's diet. Ammunition was expensive, perhaps 2 Finnish marks per cartridge when the average daily wage for a farm laborer was 5 marks. Every shot had to count. Missing meant wasting money and going without meat. Häyhä's father taught him marksmanship fundamentals using a single-shot rifle that required manual reloading after each shot. The slow reload forced careful aim. Häyhä learned to estimate range by comparing the apparent size of animals to their known actual size. A hare that appeared 1 finger width tall at arm's length was approximately 50 meters away. An elk that appeared 3 finger widths tall was approximately 100 meters away. He learned to read wind by watching grass and branches move. He learned to account for bullet drop at extended ranges by aiming high. By age 12, Häyhä could consistently hit rabbits at 150 meters, a distance where the rabbit appeared smaller than a fingernail held at arm's length. By age 15, he regularly took elk at 300 meters with single shots to the vital zone behind the shoulder. His success rate exceeded 80%, extraordinary for iron-sighted rifles shooting at living targets that could move unpredictably. Finland gained independence from Russia in 1917, after the Russian Revolution created chaos that allowed Finland to separate. The new nation required military service from all male citizens. Häyhä was conscripted in 1925 at age 19, serving his mandatory year in the Finnish army. The army recognized his marksmanship skills immediately. During qualification, Häyhä scored 42 out of 50 possible points at 150 meters, placing him in the top 5% of recruits. The army wanted to train him as a formal sniper, but Häyhä declined. Snipers used scoped rifles, operated alone or in pairs, and took specialized positions away from their units. Häyhä preferred staying with his rifle company, shooting with iron sights, and remaining part of the group. The army accepted his decision. After completing his service year, Häyhä returned to farming, joining the reserves as a corporal in a rifle company. Between 1926 and 1939, Häyhä lived quietly, farming his family's land, hunting in the forests, and competing in rifle matches organized by the Finnish Civil Guard, a voluntary defense organization. The Civil Guard held annual competitions across Finland, testing marksmanship, skiing, and military skills. Häyhä competed regularly, usually winning or placing near the top. His preferred rifle was his personal Mosin Nagant M2830, manufactured at the Finnish Valmet Armory, using the Imperial Russian 1891 Mosin Nagant action, but with Finnish improvements. Technical specifications of Häyhä's rifle explain both its capabilities and limitations. Mosin Nagant M2830, bolt-action rifle, 7.62 mm R caliber. Overall length, 46.5 inches. Barrel length, 27 inches. Weight empty, 9.2 pounds. Magazine capacity, 5 rounds loaded from stripper clips. Iron sights consisted of a front post and rear notch adjustable for elevation. Maximum effective range with iron sights for an expert marksman, approximately 500 meters under ideal conditions. Under combat conditions in Arctic weather, with tired shooter and moving targets, practical range was 300 to 400 meters. The ammunition was standard 7.62654 female star ball ammunition, using a 149-grain bullet with muzzle velocity of approximately 2,650 feet per second. At 300 meters, bullet drop was approximately 40 inches below line of sight, requiring the shooter to aim significantly high to compensate. Wind drift at 300 meters in a 10-mile-per-hour crosswind was approximately 15 inches. These factors made long-range shooting with iron sights extremely difficult, requiring expert range estimation and wind reading. Häyhä's refusal to use a telescopic sight seemed foolish to many observers. Scopes magnified targets, making them easier to hit at distance. They provided clearer sight pictures in low light. They were standard equipment for snipers in every modern army. But Häyhä understood that in Finnish winter conditions, scopes had fatal disadvantages. At -40 degrees Fahrenheit, breath vapor freezes instantly. A shooter looking through a scope breathes directly onto the lens, fogging it with condensation that freezes immediately into ice. Clearing the ice requires removing gloves and wiping the lens, exposing hands to frostbite temperatures, and wasting precious time. Iron sights, being open, don't fog. Breath bypasses the sights entirely. Additionally, scope lenses reflect light. In winter, snow conditions where light reflects from all directions, a scope lens can create a flash visible hundreds of meters away, revealing the sniper's position. Iron sights don't reflect light. Finally, scopes require raising the head higher to achieve proper eye relief, the distance between eye and scope necessary for clear sight picture. Higher head position means larger silhouette, easier target for enemy counter snipers. Häyhä's iron sights kept his head low, didn't fog, didn't reflect light, and worked perfectly in conditions that rendered scopes useless. On November 30th, 1939, the Soviet Union invaded Finland, initiating what became known as the Winter War. The invasion came after Finland refused Soviet demands to cede territory along the border and lease the Hanko Peninsula for a naval base. The Soviet Union, having recently signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact with Nazi Germany, felt secure on its western frontier and decided to resolve the Finnish question through military force. The Red Army crossed the border with massive force. The main thrust came through the Karelian Isthmus north of Leningrad, where 3 Soviet armies totaling approximately 250,000 men attacked Finnish positions. Secondary attacks came along the entire 800-mile border, attempting to cut Finland in half and seize key transportation routes. Soviet planners expected victory within 2 weeks. Joseph Stalin wanted to install a puppet government in Helsinki by Christmas. Finland mobilized its reserves, calling up 180,000 men to defend the nation. Simo Häyhä received his mobilization order on December 1, 1939, reporting to his unit, 6th Company of JR 34, Infantry Regiment 34, assigned to defend the Kollaa sector in eastern Finland. The sector faced Soviet 139th Rifle Division, approximately 18,000 men supported by tanks and artillery. The Finnish forces at Kollaa numbered approximately 4,000 men with minimal artillery and no tanks. The mathematics were brutal. The Soviets had 4.5 to 1 numerical advantage at the sector level, better than 100 to 1 advantage in armor, and overwhelming advantage in artillery. But the Finns had terrain knowledge, superior winter warfare skills, and motivation. The Soviets were invading. The Finns were defending their homes. Häyhä arrived at Kollaa on December 5, 1939. The temperature was minus 25 degrees Fahrenheit. Snow depth exceeded 3 feet in the forests. The Soviets had already launched 2 attacks along the Kollaa River, attempting to break through Finnish positions and advance toward the railway town of Jutseino, 20 miles west. Both attacks had been repulsed with heavy Soviet casualties. The Soviet 139th Division had lost approximately 1,200 men in 4 days, while Finnish casualties were under 100. Häyhä's company commander assigned him to a defensive position overlooking a forest trail that Soviet troops used to approach Finnish lines. The position offered excellent fields of fire across 400 yards of relatively open forest. Tall pine trees provided cover, but limited undergrowth meant good visibility near ground level. Soviet troops advancing along the trail would be exposed for several hundred yards. Häyhä prepared his position carefully over 3 days. He dug a shallow trench in the snow, using excavated snow to build a low wall in front that provided cover while allowing him to shoot over it. He packed the snow wall tightly, creating a solid barrier that would stop rifle bullets. In front of his position, he packed snow firmly to prevent muzzle blast from kicking up snow that would reveal his location. He positioned himself so the low winter sun would be behind him during shooting hours, making him harder to see while improving his visibility of targets. His tactical approach was systematic. He would remain in position from first light until last light, approximately 6 a.m. to 3 p.m., during December, when daylight lasted only 9 hours. He would not move during daylight, except in emergency. He would not shoot unless he had clear shot at vital zone. He would not shoot at targets beyond 400 meters, where iron sights became unreliable. He would limit himself to 5 shots per engagement, then remain motionless for 30 minutes to observe results and determine if his position was compromised. On December 7, 1939, Häyhä achieved his first kills. A Soviet patrol, 12 men in brown uniforms clearly visible against white snow, moved down the trail at approximately 8:30 a.m. Range was 250 meters. Häyhä waited until the patrol was directly in front of his position, moving slowly through deep snow. He aimed at the lead soldier, accounting for 15 inches of bullet drop at 250 meters, and fired. The 7.62 millimeters bullet struck the soldier in the chest. He fell forward into the snow. The other soldiers dropped immediately, seeking cover, unsure where the shot came from. Häyhä remained motionless for 30 seconds, observing. The Soviets were confused, looking in wrong direction, assuming the shot came from their right flank. Häyhä aimed at a soldier who raised his head to look around. Second shot, second kill. The soldier dropped. Now the Soviets knew approximately where the shooter was, but not precisely. They began firing toward Häyhä's general area, bullets striking trees and snow 20 to 50 meters from his position. Häyhä remained motionless, below the snow wall, invisible. After 2 minutes, the Soviet fire slackened. Häyhä raised his head slowly, identified a target attempting to crawl away. Third shot, third kill. The remaining 9 Soviet soldiers retreated rapidly, abandoning their dead and running back down the trail. Häyhä did not shoot at retreating targets. He conserved ammunition and avoided revealing his exact position with multiple shots. The engagement lasted 4 minutes, 3 Soviet soldiers dead, 0 Finnish casualties. The Soviets now knew a skilled marksman controlled that trail. Over the next 5 days, Soviet patrols attempted to use the same trail 4 more times. Each time, Häyhä killed 2 to 4 soldiers before the patrols withdrew. By December 12, 1939, he had 17 confirmed kills. Soviet troops began avoiding that trail entirely, forcing them to use longer routes through deeper snow that slowed their advance and tired them before they even reached Finnish main defensive positions. But the Soviets continued probing Finnish defenses at other locations. On December 14th, a Soviet company, approximately 120 men, attempted to flank Finnish positions by moving through deep forest where trees were spaced widely enough to allow infantry movement. The company commander assumed that deep forest offered concealment from Finnish observation. He was wrong. Häyhä had identified this route days earlier as a probable Soviet approach. He established a secondary position overlooking a natural bottleneck where the forest narrowed between 2 frozen ponds. Any unit moving through that area would be compressed into a column approximately 30 meters wide, perfect for systematic shooting. He positioned himself 280 meters from the bottleneck, range he could handle reliably with iron sights. The Soviet company entered the kill zone at 10:47 a.m. on December 14th. The temperature was -38 Fahrenheit with no wind, ideal conditions for precision shooting. Häyhä allowed the lead elements to pass through the bottleneck, waiting for maximum enemy density in the target area. When approximately 40 Soviet soldiers were compressed in the narrow space, he began shooting. First shot struck a soldier in the center of the formation. The man fell without sound, killed instantly by chest shot. The formation stopped, soldiers confused about what happened. Second shot, 3 seconds later, killed an officer who was shouting orders. Third shot, killed a soldier attempting to take cover behind a tree. The Soviets began returning fire, shooting in wrong direction, assuming shots came from their left flank. Häyhä remained motionless for 45 seconds, allowing Soviet attention to focus elsewhere. Then he resumed shooting. 4th shot, 5th shot, 6th shot, 3 more soldiers down. The Soviet company broke, soldiers running back through the forest, abandoning equipment and wounded. The engagement lasted 4 minutes, 7 confirmed kills. The Soviets lost momentum and cohesion, requiring 2 hours to reorganize. Later that afternoon, Finnish patrols investigated the engagement site and found the 7 bodies plus 2 more soldiers who had died from wounds while retreating. They recovered Soviet equipment including 3 Mosin Nagant M1891-30 rifles, 2 PPSH-41 submachine guns, and ammunition. More importantly, they recovered a Soviet map showing planned attack routes, intelligence that helped Finnish commanders position defenses. By December 21, 1939, Häyhä's confirmed kill count reached 89. Each kill was verified either by Finnish observers using binoculars or by physical confirmation during patrols that recovered Soviet equipment and identified casualties. Captain Juutalainen maintained meticulous records because Häyhä's achievements were becoming significant for Finnish morale. Newspapers across Finland reported the sniper of Kollaa without identifying him, but Finnish soldiers knew who he was. The Soviet division commander recognized that a single Finnish sniper was disrupting his operations significantly. Units refused to patrol certain sectors. Advance. Rates slowed as soldiers moved more cautiously. Officers had difficulty maintaining discipline when men feared invisible death. The commander ordered artillery strikes on suspected sniper positions, firing 76mm guns at forested areas where the sniper might be hiding. On December 22nd, Soviet artillery fired a 30-minute barrage at the forest sector, where Häyhä usually operated. expending approximately 200 shells. The barrage destroyed large areas of forest, splintering trees and creating massive craters in the snow. But Häyhä had withdrawn 400 meters behind the barrage area after Finnish observers reported Soviet artillery being repositioned. When the barrage ended, he returned to his fighting position, which was untouched, and resumed operations. That evening, as twilight reduced visibility to approximately 100 meters, a Soviet patrol attempted to move through the destroyed forest zone, assuming any Finnish sniper would be dead or withdrawn. Häyhä spotted the patrol at 2:47 p.m., just before last light. He waited until they were committed to the open ground, then fired 4 shots in rapid succession, killing 3 soldiers and wounding a 4th. The patrol retreated into darkness, leaving their casualties. Christmas Day 1940 passed with no Soviet attacks at Kollaa. Both sides observed informal ceasefire, though no official agreement existed. Häyhä remained in position throughout the day, observing Soviet positions but not shooting. Finnish and Soviet soldiers could hear each other singing Christmas songs across no man's land. The surreal peace lasted until the following morning, when combat resumed. Between December 26th and December 31st, Häyhä achieved 28 additional confirmed kills. His methods had become more efficient through practice. He could estimate range accurately within 10 meters up to 400-meter distances. He understood wind effects so well, he rarely missed shots under 300 meters. His shooting positions were chosen so carefully that Soviet counterfire never came close to his actual location. He had developed the discipline to remain motionless for hours, even in extreme cold, waiting for optimal shooting opportunities. Soviet forces adapted their tactics to counter the sniper threat. They began moving at night, using darkness to avoid sniper fire. They sent out counter-sniper teams equipped with scoped rifles and orders to locate and eliminate the Finnish sniper. They increased artillery preparation before infantry advances, trying to kill or suppress snipers. None of these tactics worked effectively against Häyhä. Night movement failed because Soviet troops, unfamiliar with the terrain and lacking proper winter training, moved slowly and noisily through the forests. Finnish listening posts detected them easily. Finnish troops would illuminate the area with flares, exposing the Soviets and forcing them to withdraw or die. Häyhä killed 23 Soviet soldiers during night movements that were illuminated by flares, shooting at Obor's ranges under 200 meters, where even in poor light he could make accurate shots. Soviet counter-sniper teams failed because they didn't understand Finnish winter tactics. Soviet snipers used scoped rifles, wore brown uniforms, and positioned themselves in obvious locations like tall trees or elevated ground that provided good fields of fire, but were also obvious to experienced Finnish soldiers. Häyhä identified and reported Soviet sniper positions to Finnish machine gunners or mortar teams, who would destroy the positions with massed fire. Several Soviet snipers were killed by Finnish fire before they ever spotted Häyhä. The artillery preparations failed because Häyhä never stayed in position during bombardment. Finnish observation posts would spot Soviet artillery preparations and warn frontline troops. Häyhä would retreat to deeper positions, wait out the bombardment, then return to his fighting position. The Soviets were destroying empty forest. By January 15, 1940, Häyhä's confirmed kill count reached 219. This number exceeded the individual kill counts of famous snipers from previous wars. The best German snipers from World War I had achieved approximately 150 kills over 4 years. Häyhä had exceeded that number in 6 weeks. Soviet troops began calling him Belaya Smert, the White Death. Stories circulated among Soviet units about a Finnish ghost who killed from impossible distances and could not be found. The psychological impact of Häyhä's presence affected Soviet morale significantly. Troops knew that advancing through certain sectors meant probable death from an invisible sniper. Officers had difficulty getting men to volunteer for patrols in areas where the White Death operated. Some Soviet units refused orders to advance through Kollaa sector, forcing Soviet commanders to rotate different units through the area to maintain pressure on Finnish positions. Soviet headquarters, receiving reports about this single Finnish sniper, made elimination of the White Death a priority. They sent specialized NKVD counter-sniper teams, elite soldiers, with extensive training and high-quality equipment. They offered rewards to any soldier who killed the Finnish sniper. They threatened punishment for units that failed to locate him. None of these measures succeeded. The NKVD teams faced the fundamental problem that Häyhä was invisible when stationary. His white camouflage matched the snow perfectly. His shooting positions were chosen specifically to avoid detection. He shot only when he had clear advantage, refusing shots that would unnecessarily reveal his location. After shooting, he remained motionless for extended periods, sometimes 30 minutes or more, allowing Soviet attention to fade before he moved. One NKVD team attempted to locate Häyhä by having a soldier deliberately expose himself as bait, while other snipers watched for muzzle flash. The soldier was killed instantly by Häyhä's shot, but the observers saw no muzzle flash, because Häyhä had packed snow in front of his position that absorbed the blast. The team withdrew after their bait soldier died uselessly. By February 17, 1940, Häyhä's confirmed kill count reached 407. At this point, he had been operating continuously for 79 days in temperatures that frequently dropped below -40 Fahrenheit. He had survived numerous artillery bombardments, several direct counter-sniper operations, and constant exposure to extreme cold that caused frostbite and exhaustion, even in the best Finnish winter soldiers. The February fighting intensified, as the Soviet Union recognized the war was not progressing according to plan. Soviet Premier Joseph Stalin, embarrassed by Finland's resistance, ordered a massive offensive to break Finnish lines before spring thaw made operations impossible. Soviet forces in the Karelian Isthmus launched coordinated attacks with hundreds of tanks and thousands of troops. At Kollaa, Soviet forces received orders to break through Finnish defenses regardless of cost. Between February 1st and February 10th, Soviet forces launched 8 major attacks at Kollaa, each preceded by heavy artillery preparation. The attacks followed similar pattern: artillery barrage lasting 30 to 60 minutes, infantry advance in company or battalion strength, Finnish defensive fire, Soviet retreat after suffering heavy casualties. Häyhä participated in defensive operations during each attack, targeting Soviet officers and machine gun crews whose deaths disrupted Soviet coordination. On February 5th, during the largest Soviet attack of the month, Häyhä demonstrated why experienced snipers were decisive in defensive combat. The Soviet attack began at 9 a.m., with artillery barrage that lasted 45 minutes, destroying much of the Finnish forward positions. At 9:45 a.m., Soviet infantry advanced, approximately 800 men moving in waves across 400 meters of open ground toward Finnish trenches. Häyhä was positioned 350 meters behind the Finnish front line, elevated on small hill that provided clear field of view over the battlefield. As Soviet troops crossed the open ground, he systematically targeted officers and NCOs, identifying them by their behavior rather than by insignia, which were often concealed. Officers moved differently, gestured to direct troops, positioned themselves to observe rather than just advance. Häyhä could identify officers within seconds of observing a Soviet formation. First target was a Soviet company commander, identified by the way he moved along the formation directing troops. Range was 380 meters. Häyhä aimed high to account for bullet drop, squeezed the trigger. The officer fell. Second target was a platoon sergeant who moved forward to take command. Range 340 meters. Shot. Kill. Third target was another officer attempting to rally troops who were becoming confused without their commander. Range 320 meters. Shot. Kill. Häyhä fired 11 shots during the 25-minute Soviet advance, achieving 9 confirmed kills. All officers are senior NCOs. The effect was devastating to Soviet coordination. Units that lost their leaders became disorganized, slowed their advance, bunched together seeking leadership. Finnish machine guns exploited the confusion, inflicting heavy casualties. The Soviet attack failed, retreating after losing approximately 230 men, while Finnish casualties were fewer than 30. Soviet commanders analyzing the attack recognized that concentrated sniper fire against leadership had disrupted their operations. They ordered new tactics. Officers would remain in rear positions during attacks. Junior officers and NCOs would wear no distinctive insignia, and all troops would wear identical uniforms to make leadership identification impossible. These measures proved partially effective. Häyhä could no longer identify leaders by insignia, but behavior still revealed leadership. Soldiers who directed others, who moved with purpose while others hesitated, who positioned themselves to observe rather than just survive, were leaders. Häyhä continued targeting them with high success rate. By February 12th, Soviet casualties at Kollaa exceeded 12,000 killed and wounded since the war began. The 139th Rifle Division had been reinforced twice with fresh units, but continued suffering unsustainable losses. Soviet troops gave the Kollaa sector a reputation as a death trap, a place where soldiers went to die. The reputation had strategic effect. Units ordered to Kollaa sector experienced desertion rates double the average for other sectors. Some soldiers shot themselves in hands or feet to avoid deployment to Kollaa. The psychological warfare aspect of Häyhä's presence cannot be overstated. Soviet soldiers knew about the White Death. Stories circulated describing him as a supernatural figure, a ghost who appeared in fog, a demon who killed from impossible distances. The truth that he was a small Finnish farmer with iron-sighted rifle and extraordinary skill was less terrifying than the mythology, but more dangerous. On February 17th, Soviet headquarters sent a specialized Spetsnaz counter-sniper team to Kollaa with orders to eliminate the White Death. The team consisted of 6 highly trained snipers equipped with Mosin Nagant rifles with Pu 3.5x scopes, the best optical equipment Soviet forces possessed. The team commander was a veteran of the Spanish Civil War who had achieved 27 confirmed kills fighting for Republican forces. He had trained at the Soviet sniper school and received personal orders from NKVD leadership to eliminate the Finnish sniper. The Spetsnaz team arrived at Kollaa on February 18th and began operations immediately. Their tactic was to establish observation positions covering areas where the Finnish sniper operated, watch for any sign of activity, and coordinate fire to engage him from multiple angles simultaneously. The team spent 3 days observing, identifying 5 locations where they believed the Finnish sniper might position himself. On February 21st, the Spetsnaz team set up coordinated ambush. Soviet infantry would conduct small patrol as bait, moving through area where Finnish sniper usually engaged. The 6 Spetsnaz snipers would position themselves with clear views of likely Finnish sniper positions, ready to fire simultaneously at first sign of muzzle flash or movement. The plan failed completely. Häyhä identified the Soviet sniper positions before they identified his. The Spetsnaz snipers, using scoped rifles, needed to raise their heads higher to achieve proper eye relief, creating larger silhouettes. They positioned themselves in locations with good fields of fire, but also good visibility from other positions. They wore standard brown uniforms that contrasted with snow. Häyhä spotted 2 of them immediately, identified probable positions for the others, and withdrew from his planned position. When the Soviet patrol moved through the kill zone at 10:30 a.m. on February 21st, Häyhä didn't shoot. The Spetsnaz snipers waited, watching suspected Finnish positions, seeing nothing. After 90 minutes with no Finnish sniper activity, the Soviet patrol commander assumed the area was safe and ordered his men to advance more carelessly. At that moment, Häyhä, who had repositioned 200 meters from where the Spetsnaz team expected him, opened fire on the patrol from an unexpected angle. The first shot killed a Soviet soldier. The Spetsnaz snipers immediately looked toward the sound, trying to acquire target, but Häyhä had chosen his position, so he had cover from the Spetsnaz sniper positions. They couldn't see him. He fired 3 more shots in 20 seconds, killing 2 more Soviet soldiers and forcing the patrol to retreat. The Spetsnaz team fired approximately 40 rounds at areas where they thought the shots came from, hitting nothing. The engagement demonstrated that Häyhä's tactical superiority came not from superior equipment, but from superior understanding of terrain, enemy behavior, and basic fieldcraft. The Spetsnaz snipers had better equipment, extensive training, and numerical advantage, but they didn't understand Finnish winter warfare, they didn't know the terrain, and they underestimated their opponent. The Spetsnaz team remained at Kollaa for 10 more days, achieving no success against Häyhä. On March the 2nd, frustrated by their failure, they requested withdrawal, stating that the target was too skilled and too familiar with terrain for them to engage effectively. Soviet headquarters approved the withdrawal. The best counter-sniper team the Red Army could deploy had failed completely. His physical condition had deteriorated significantly by late February. He had lost approximately 20 pounds from his starting weight of 140 pounds. His face showed early signs of frostbite on the nose and cheeks, where skin exposure was unavoidable. His fingers had limited sensation from repeated exposure to cold when firing his rifle without gloves. He developed chronic cough from breathing cold air. His eyes were bloodshot from constant strain, focusing through iron sights in poor light. But he continued operating, refusing evacuation or rest because he understood that every day he kept the Soviets cautious was another day Finland survived. The Finnish defensive line at Kollaa held throughout the war, never broken despite continuous Soviet attacks. The Soviet 139th Division, which began the war with 18,000 men, was reduced to approximately 8,000 effectives by late February. Finnish casualties at Kollaa were approximately 800 dead and wounded. The exchange ratio was approximately 12 Soviet casualties for every Finnish casualty, an astonishing figure that demonstrated both Finnish tactical excellence and Soviet tactical failures. On March 6, 1940, at approximately 1:30 p.m., Häyhä was in his usual position, having achieved 4 kills that morning against Soviet soldiers attempting to probe Finnish positions. A Soviet artillery observation team had spotted activity in the area and called for indirect fire. Instead of standard high-explosive shells, the Soviet artillery fired a salvo of explosive bullets, specialized anti-personnel rounds designed to airburst above ground and spray shrapnel downward. One explosive bullet detonated approximately 15 feet from Häyhä's position, close enough that shrapnel and fragments struck his face. A large fragment, possibly part of the bullet jacket or artillery shell casing, struck him on the left side of his jaw, tore through his cheek, and exited through the right side of his face below his eye. The wound was catastrophic, destroying much of his lower face and jaw. Häyhä lost consciousness immediately from shock and blood loss. His squad mates, who were in positions 50 meters away, heard the explosion and rushed to his position. They found him unconscious, face destroyed, bleeding heavily. They applied pressure bandages to stop bleeding, but his wounds were so severe they doubted he would survive the evacuation to the aid station. They carried him on a stretcher through the forest to the regimental aid station, a journey of approximately 3 kilometers that took 40 minutes through snow and enemy fire. At the aid station, the medical officer, Captain Kollaa, examined Häyhä and determined his wounds exceeded the capabilities of field medical facilities. He needed immediate surgery by a skilled surgeon, or he would die from blood loss or infection. Häyhä was evacuated by truck to the field hospital at Kotka, arriving approximately 4 hours after being wounded. The surgeon who examined him later stated that he had never seen anyone survive wounds that severe. Häyhä's jaw was shattered, his cheek was torn away, his mouth and throat were damaged, and he had lost massive amounts of blood. The surgeon performed emergency surgery that lasted 3 hours, reconstructing as much of the damaged tissue as possible and stopping internal bleeding. Häyhä remained unconscious for 7 days. When he woke on March 13, 1940, the Winter War had ended. Finland and the Soviet Union signed the Moscow Peace Treaty on March 12th, ending hostilities. Finland ceded approximately 11% of its territory to the Soviet Union, but retained independence. The war that was supposed to last 2 weeks had lasted 105 days. The Soviet Union had achieved its territorial objectives, but at enormous cost. Approximately 127,000 Soviet soldiers killed compared to 25,000 Finnish casualties. Häyhä spent the next 6 months in hospital, undergoing multiple reconstructive surgeries on his face. The surgeons were able to rebuild his jaw using bone grafts and reconstruct his cheek using tissue from other parts of his body. But the damage was permanent. His face was severely scarred, his jaw never regained full mobility, and he had chronic pain for the rest of his life. During his recovery, the Finnish military promoted him to second lieutenant, recognizing his extraordinary service. He received multiple military decorations, including the Cross of Liberty, Finland's highest military honor. His final confirmed kill count was determined to be 542, though some estimates placed his total kills higher when including unconfirmed kills. The 542 confirmed kills remain the highest individual sniper count in any war in human history. Häyhä never returned to combat. His injuries prevented military service. After the war, he returned to farming, living quietly in southeastern Finland. He avoided publicity, rarely giving interviews, and preferred to be left alone. When journalists sought him out, he gave brief responses emphasizing that he had simply done his duty like any Finnish soldier. In 1998, at age 92, Häyhä gave one of his few extended interviews to a Finnish military history researcher. When asked how he felt about killing 542 men, Häyhä replied, "I did what I was told to do, as well as I could. The Soviets invaded my country. We were defending our homes." When asked what he thought about during combat, he said, "I thought about staying alive and making sure my squad mates stayed alive. That's all." Simo Häyhä died on April 1, 2002, at age 96. He was buried in Ruokolahti, Finland, with full military honors. His funeral was attended by Finnish veterans, military officials, and several Russian veterans who had fought against Finland in the Winter War and came to pay respects to an enemy they remembered as honorable. His legacy influenced military sniper doctrine worldwide. Modern armies study his tactics, using iron sights in extreme conditions, preparing multiple positions, shooting conservatively to avoid detection, understanding that patience is more valuable than volume of fire. The Finnish Defense Forces still teach the Häyhä method to sniper candidates, emphasizing that superior technology matters less than superior fieldcraft and shooting fundamentals. His rifle, the Mosin Nagant M2830 he used during the war, is displayed at the Finnish Military Museum in Helsinki. The rifle shows wear from extensive use but remains functional. Museum visitors can see the iron sights that Häyhä used to achieve 542 confirmed kills. Simple notch and post sights that required no batteries, never fogged, and worked perfectly at -40 degrees. December 21, 1939 lasted 9 hours of daylight, in which Simo Häyhä killed 12 Soviet soldiers and forced an entire division to change tactics. One Finnish farmer, 5 feet tall, 140 pounds, iron-sighted rifle, white camouflage, extreme cold, when individual skill defeated numerical superiority, when knowledge of terrain defeated advanced technology, when patience defeated aggression. Simo Häyhä, born December 17, 1905, farm laborer and hunter, conscripted 1925, recalled to service 1939, achieved 542 confirmed kills in 98 days of combat, wounded March 6, 1940, survived catastrophic facial wounds, lived to age 96, proved that one skilled soldier fighting for his home could change a war. Not because he was superhuman, because he understood that in extreme conditions, simple solutions work better than complex ones. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe. Your support preserves these histories of extraordinary individuals in impossible situations. Tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We honor those who proved that courage and skill can overcome overwhelming odds. Thank you for keeping their stories alive.